Well, that's okay. Thank you. All right. Well, it's 6:30 and then some, and Aaron's bringing pizza in for us, so we can get started now. Can we? I guess do we take roll call anymore? I can see everybody's here except for Jeff and Kelly.
I appreciate a roll call just so I can know everyone's names.
That would be great. You like that?
All right, Dave Evans.
Here.
Jeffrey Selzer.
He's excused absence.
Kelly Honaker. Derek Mills.
Here.
Matt Duff. Michael Gloden. Here. And Tom Grant.
And could we please introduce our newest member? Enter and sign in, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Kleinfelter. I'm the newest transportation planner on the team. I come from Dr. Cog most recently. I have a diverse background in transportation planning. I've worked in consulting and advocacy in regional government and now in local government. So actually in state government too. So I've been all across the board, but excited to be here and helping continue the efforts that Littleton's doing here. And so, yeah.
Welcome, Emily. I don't want to let any secrets out, but they've been real excited.
Well, equally so.
It wears off, but initially. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any public comment tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome, Pam, if you'd like to come up and say something.
Shane has a PDF. All right, so
Kelly is present.
my name is Pam Chadbourne, and I've got a concern about Littleton Boulevard. So I called this need for an integrated functional transportation master plan, which, by the way, you probably should be updating this year.
Yeah.
Yes, please continue or was it advanced?
So ours isn't integrated and functional. It's a TM.
It's not functional.
Well, it's a good start. It's a lot.
It function, but we
Oh,
don't
wait,
have the.
your comment.
So I'm concerned about Littleton Boulevard. There's no need for rapid change based on our city revenues. Where's our city council liaison?
I think they take the summer off, Pam.
Okay.
Yeah, he's out of town tonight.
And so the revenue to the city is doing fine and it's increasing on Littleton Boulevard. Next page is the two charts and Littleton Boulevard. There's no compulsion from the city side. There's no problem with the performance of Littleton Boulevard or around there. So next chart is, there are many independent projects on the next one, but they have inconsistent timelines. So there's something called the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan, but it's a 2 to 3 year window. And it says, oh, we're going to integrate historic preservation and transportation and economic development and housing. But there's an enterprise zone, which is already passed. There's an economic development SEDS strategy already passed. There's an incentive plan that's supposed to pass in September. And there's Project Downtown, which you've already seen and is also supposed to pass in September. And if you go to the next slide, there's also conflicting goals and premature actions and implementations. For example, Project Management 101, we're not even on the map. We wouldn't even get an F. This is not the way that you manage this kind of work. You all know that there's one infrastructure. It works one way. There are not 6 different departments siloing and planning for their own designs on each place. We've got to integrate our mission goals in terms of functional outcomes and don't just jump to implementations that aren't optional. So if you go on to the next one, too many slides for the time here. This is the study area for the proposed sub-area plan. It's made even smaller. And just for fun, I mean, you see Littleton Boulevard kind of down to the railroad tracks and downtown's on there a little bit. If you go to the next one, that's the enterprise zone. Now that's all the north side plus along Santa Fe. We have retail to the west, so it could include that too. Is that time?
No, you have 25 seconds.
Okay, so that includes Littleton Boulevard. Jump to the next one. And there are I used 2 of the Project Downtowns, and that multimodal really depends on, where's where are bike and peds and vehicles coming from, Littleton Boulevard? Next one is the same way, and it's different. If we jump to one of those in September and invest in it, Littleton Boulevard is already constrained.
That's time.
Okay, so there's a problem here, and I want you guys to get a functional master transportation plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, I think we're through the first 3 items, and now we have the project site visit on here, and we thought it'd be a good idea to run this past everybody. We talked about this a little bit at the, Jeff and I do a planning session with Jane and usually with Kenna. And this, I've gotten a lot out of the site visit when we drive around in the little magic bus. But oftentimes we don't have everybody there that from the board. And because we're going to some effort to have the city staff do that for us, I would really love to have 100% participation if we possibly can. And having said that, I'm crossing my fingers that I don't screw that up and be the one of 7 that doesn't make it. I've made I think the ones that we've done in the past, but we thought we would throw it out as early as possible and ask people to put it on your calendar, to save it if you can. We understand this is a volunteer board and people's lives come first before their volunteer lives. But if you can hold that, that would be great. And if for some reason you can tell me that that's already a bad date, maybe it's not too late to recycle. But
I think it might be a bad day.
is it? Are you getting
Well,
out of town, or is there something?
No, just like last year, I had to leave halfway through because we have that solar passive house tour that our house is featured in.
Oh, yeah.
And it's usually the first Saturday of October.
Uh-huh.
So that, but I don't know if I'm gonna be on it this year.
Okay.
And I've done it 2 years in a row, so I may not do it, but it could be.
Why do you want all those strangers in your house?
I want more people to build houses efficiently. Yeah.
You're a man of persuasion. Okay, well, thanks, Matt, for that, and
But it may work.
At least you made the effort to be there for half of the thing, and if that's all we get, maybe you can do that again.
I can say no this year. I'll say no this year, because I've done it 2 years in a row, and I'll be there.
Good man. Well,
I'm good with it as long as we don't go early. If we go later in the year, I'm okay, but don't go early.
we'll go earlier.
I get
Okay.
back on the evening of the 3rd.
Well, that's really part of why we wanted to bring it up, just to give people a chance to put it, if you've got a calendar, pop it on there. And Aaron, I presume that are you gonna go with us this year and talk us through it again?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be good.
All right, because we wanted to get a good turnout, and I mean, it is for us, it's for our benefit. But when you guys make the effort to do it, I really feel strongly that we want to be partners in that, and so thanks for
What
that.
makes you think I know anything about the projects going on anymore?
Because I've been around you. And you're a wise guy, but you know something. So, yeah. Okay, I think. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just to wrap that up, I'll send out an invite. I know internally, we want to invite internally for October 5th. We'll send out an invite too, because I know there's a pretty few board members who aren't here, so if we hear that they can't make it, then I'll report back to Tom.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think, did we do it at noon last year?
We do it.
It was around then, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was around then.
And I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, if kids have soccer games or people have stuff to do on Saturday, I don't know if it's better to go early, middle, or late. But,
What do you mean I'm bringing?
are you bringing your kids?
You can, it's a study session, so. I mean-
Well, no, we have, city issued muzzles for them. No, I love children, and I think,
That was the 180.
no, I really do love children. And I'm a wise guy, actually, not Aaron. And so, yeah, I don't know if the city has liability issues with.
Oh, that's a good question.
Show them what you care about their city. That's probably why you're doing this whole thing. So anyway, all right, we got it.
And I'll send that invite to your city or your littleton.gov or littletongov.org email addresses, so.
Yeah, fantastic. Safer Streets Littleton Initiative. So, a lot of us turned up for the session. And, I thought I learned a lot even about the stuff that wasn't ours. That gave me a pretty good idea of what council was all about. But now I'm sort of blanking on, are there other things we want to do on this, Shane, at this meeting?
Yeah, well, so I don't know if everyone had a chance to review the presentation that we gave on June 6th to city council. We can pull up the presentation. We didn't want to kind of go through the whole thing again, but we're happy to. What did I say, June? Sorry. The month was the 6th, the day was the 11th. On June 11th. So if everybody had a chance to watch it, if you guys have questions, happy to do that. We can pull up the slides again if that's helpful and if that jogs any questions, but just wanted to, because it was a transportation focused presentation and safety focused, wanted to just give an opportunity for the board to ask any questions. So.
Well, I talked to Jeff a little bit about it, and maybe it's with respect to some of the other items on the agenda, but we're still struggling with how to handle the idea of focusing in on safer streets with a focus on schools, because that's on everyone's mind, but without abandoning or downplaying safety as it pertains to the rest of the transportation network. And we can't sub-optimize. I mean, I don't believe, this is my personal opinion, now this is, everyone's free to have thoughts on this, but I don't want to see us sub-optimize all modes and perhaps introduce other kinks in the system. So sometimes when if we don't analyze the safety measures adequately in advance, we could have unintended consequences. For example, funneling cars through previously quiet streets and introducing travel hazards that we don't want to deal with. So I think the trick for us, and we'll get into this discussion throughout the evening, is how do we do a better job of creating some really safe bike routes where we feel like we can ride safely? How do we have good pedestrian intersections and safe crossings and still be able to drive our cars around when we need to? Because for a lot of us, and especially for an increasingly aging population, that's going to be their mode of travel. We're not going to wish it away, so I think we have an obligation to all modes to try to do a good job. And I know you guys hear from every squeaky wheel, and so you're probably very familiar with trying to balance those competing objectives.
Someone tried to convince me yesterday at the meet greet that we should let everyone buy carts, like golf carts, and drive those around because they take up less room to park on the street.
Well, as somebody who's been run over by a golf cart and had my leg broken, you can have accidents with golf carts. They hit hard.
I think just to maybe, jog people's memories and spur some conversation, a couple slides I'll hit. So the timeline, you know, this is all stuff that's planned for this year, but really, these are all the different, within the stuff that we presented to council in February, these are all the things that we're doing. So, you know, increased communications campaign is making people aware of the fact that people walk and bike and all the things that are going on. Feedback signs, which if you've been, you know, on one of the corridors, we're hoping to do a corridor study on, that's where we place those feedback signs, which are collecting data, so that's one of the benefits of those. Education and enforcement campaign, partnering with police, bike and pedestrian projects, so implementing some pilot projects, some new pilot projects, and then revised projects from the year before. School safety zone evaluation, which we're kind of in the middle of. Traffic calming evaluation, which we kind of just kicked off. We applied for some money for some corridor design and study through a direct, reply direct to the federal government for that, through an opportunity called ATIP, and we're asking for $2 million. Our match would be the $0.6 million to study 9 corridors and do some design, updating council, joint sessions with council and you guys, and then installing the actual, you know, installing stuff in school zones and additional traffic calming. So, and of course, identifying budget needs for upcoming years. So that's kind of all that's going on top of all the other projects we have. But I think the other one that we should highlight is this one. Here's all the different pilot projects that we're looking at. The yellow ones are really, they're pilots in the sense that we're kind of installing them quickly, but those are really, you know, crosswalks and things like that near schools. Where maybe the adjacent ramps aren't perfect, but we're putting down crosswalks, trying to draw attention to drivers and let them know that kids are already walking here. But we've got some protected bike lanes, some upgraded bike stuff, a bunch of some crossing projects that came out of the trail study that you guys reviewed several times. So, yeah, is that jogging? Yeah.
How much of this is like new per se, right? Or I mean, cause the Safer Streets, I don't know what we're called, initiative program.
Yeah, initiative, yeah.
Initiative is, I mean, that language itself is relatively new, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, the graph you showed with the timetable and even these pilot projects, maybe my hope is that these aren't all brand new, but like you're finding ways to incorporate, I mean, I guess, yeah, how much of this is like, you are just taking it on and like adding onto the plate versus, I don't know, able to
Yeah, I would, and this is.
pull from plans you already had.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so as far as plans we already have, a lot of that is already, and maybe plans and intentions that we already have, all this stuff is pulled from there. So all the bike pilot projects, those are pilot projects that we've talked about doing where it's already easy to add that protection. The crossings have come from our trail connectivity study. And then the crosswalks themselves, you know, those are areas that, you know, we know needed upgrading, but we were kind of waiting for, you know, pavement to come along and upgrade some of the hard part of the street. So I would say it's all either planned or intentioned, but it wasn't necessarily on our plate yet.
It's accelerated.
Yeah, it's accelerated. So, and that's part of the reason for, like, you know, one of Robert's comments at the February 6th council meeting was that, hey, I'm looking at all these bike projects, and those are the purple and green ones, and they don't really connect. And that's part of that is because, you know, those are the areas where we know we have the street space right away and we can go in and put something on the ground quick. And, you know, I think when some people think quick, they think like next week. It's not quite that quick, but quicker than going through design, you know, grant funding if that's necessary, and then construction.
So, just because I like to ask about Phillips Avenue and I see it on there as a protected bike lane, when do we think that might happen?
Yeah, this summer, the plan is to get all this stuff installed this summer. Some of it may bleed into the fall a little bit. So.
I mean, the good news about something like that, I really think it's important for community members to get a sense for what it feels like to see that on their street. And I'll be curious for feedback from everybody on the board when you ride your bike on one of these things. Have we fixed anything? I can't tell you how many times I've stepped off the curb there where there's a big bow in the road and you didn't think there was a car coming and all of a sudden there is one. And so having that Protected bike lane, I think is gonna be huge for us to get an opportunity to do that. And you're right, it doesn't do much, and in fact, it curves the wrong way. I would love to see it somehow connect onto Lee Gulch and provide a bicycle arterial. But just to have something like that, I think is gonna be powerful for us to be able to point out to other people, well, here's a place where you can go and feel it, see it, and before we say that we're gonna change the whole city, to have something we can point at and try it out. And maybe we learn some things too. I know you guys are
Yeah.
always learning.
And I was gonna say, one of the things we've already done is we've already collected data at all of these locations, not the crosswalks, the yellow ones, but at all the trail crossing locations and all the bike areas. We've collected at least 1 point of data. Sometimes it'll be several points of data. And the goal is to, measure that. So like, okay, we have it in its existing condition. We're gonna go install something. Does that change anything? Another thing we're experimenting with is the type of quick build materials we use. So you guys have seen what we call seat curb or tough curb with the delineators. So we're gonna use that. The plan is to use that on Windermere. There's another product called an Orca. A lot of these things are being named after animals, so.
Black and white?
Yeah, it's black and white, and it looks like a parking stop, but it's shaped kind of like this. And it's apparently denser than a parking stop, and the idea is that if a car hits it, it throws the tire back into the travel lane versus allowing, if somebody goes straight at it, they can go over it, but a glancing blow, it pushes the car back into the travel lane as opposed to allowing them to go into the bike lane. We're trying that on Bellevue. There's little rubber things called, depending on the company, either armadillos or zebras. And they look like little rubber humps that you affix to the street and you kind of
You
angle.
didn't make those thump, it's
Well,
like an
they're
arm.
big, so when you hit them, it's gonna go thump. And they're pretty big, and you could go over them, but you're definitely gonna know when you've hit one in your car. And then those will be kind of at an angle so that if a car hits it again, it pushes it back away from the bike lane. Assuming it's in the nearest lane, if it comes across travel lanes, it'd be different, but. And these are, quick things that we can do, and that's part of the point too, is to experiment with those and say, okay, what things did we not think about? Does the Orca work as well as we thought it did? Does it create other problems?
I love it.
One question I have, you said Bellevue, was that for a protected bike lane trial?
Yeah, so, and it's west of Lowell specifically, so where it becomes a parkway and there's a large median. Right now, there's a pretty generous travel lane, like 15, 16 feet, and then there's a bike lane. And so, we buffered it not too long ago, and then Denver Water came in and destroyed a lot of our striping. So the idea is to, repaint that and then put something in the buffer. So, and there would be breaks for intersections, but.
Yeah, I'm blanking on which one Lowell is.
Oh, here.
Arlo Park, kind of way over there.
Black Canyon becomes Lowell.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah.
So keep going past Goddard,
Yeah,
up to that next signal after you get past Goddard.
yeah, right where that new potential development could be, where there's empty space by Home Depot. All right, yeah.
Can I throw in a request that the guys putting those things in be conscious of the pitfalls, some of the drains and some of those other things that as a cyclist, as you're cruising along, sometimes you open traffic to avoid.
Sure.
All of that stuff, and put one of those things there. I can probably hop it, but I don't think most.
Okay, yeah, that's a good thing to know, so yeah. Yeah, and there's, with a lot of this quick build stuff too, like we can talk about this, but we're putting up some of those school signs and we're getting feedback like, hey, this is, like right next to my tree or something like that. So yeah, things like that where it's quick build, so we're trying to do it quick, but certainly as there's feedback, and feedback like, oh yeah, we could move this here, or there's a reason it goes better here versus there, then yeah, that's stuff we're open to. So not every request because this is recorded. We've had some requests that we're gonna have to say no to because the sign is in the best place right now, but.
In general, we're trying to maintain adequate bike lanes that are outside that buffer in the protected area. So if there is a drain or something, you shouldn't be forced to go through it. There should be plenty of bike lane to get around without.
Sometimes just other water.
Tree falling,
Well,
branches,
yeah, but no, the water, valves,
Oh, yeah.
those can be.
And these are not bi-directional bike lanes, right? This is,
No, there'll be one on each side of the street, yep.
all right, yeah, okay.
Quick question, Shane, is with there being multiple major bikeways through Littleton, is there some of these projects that are incorporating would be a connection to one of the major lanes so that more traffic can go through it instead of a kind of an isolated local area?
Yeah, not with these ones in particular. So part of the grant funding that we're applying for is to look at those internal roadways and make a better network. That's how we kind of, that's the story we told in our grant application, but yeah, let me go back to the. Yeah, so this is kind of, so some of these connect, like there are bike lanes on Windermere that go south, and like a lot of bike lanes in Windermere, they disappear for a little bit and then come back in certain sections. So, and then, Pennsylvania here will connect to Mineral. There's a pretty generous sidewalk. You guys want to see the screen, or should I just
He's
describe
pointing at
it?
stuff on the screen.
Well, he knows, he's got to.
I felt it.
Yeah, thank you, yeah, the description was so rich, yeah. Sorry, so, yeah, so here on Pennsylvania, like this connects to Mineral, and there's a fairly wide sidewalk walk on the south side of Mineral. Windermere connects to an existing bike lane. It's not buffered or protected, and we don't have plans to do that right now. That's one of the areas that we'll study. Bellevue connects, there's a sidewalk on the south side of Bellevue that's fairly generous once you, cross over Roll, so. And then,
There's bike lanes on both.
yeah, yeah, and then Irving connects down to a school, so.
Mineral's Mineral's a big street, and there's a lot of parkway, and there's a pretty decent sidewalk network there.
Maybe the widest street in the city possibly.
I mean, it's
So big.
it's such a prime target and for a protected bike lane. And the fact that it connects east to west down to the Mary Carter Greenway.
Well, it crosses the Highland Canal, the Mary Carter Greenway, like it's just such a strategically, it's an incredible spot to put something in.
Yeah.
Bicycle people that I know tell me this.
Yes. Yes.
And to your point though, but the biggest issue becomes is how do you cross Santa Fe, especially with future projects coming up?
Go up and go over the.
Yeah, yeah.
I have dreams, but they cost tens of millions of dollars over there. And then you'd have to deal with BNSF, right? So, yeah.
Well, getting there,
I rode that the other day on the way to the Littleton meet and greet. I just went up RTD, I went through the parking lot and then RTD and then across, but that's not ideal, but yeah.
And I remember you mentioning something with the Costco development that's gonna go on there, trying to encourage that to prompt some, but you really say, but it wouldn't be the whole way, and so it's almost more detrimental to have a protected bike lane for a little bit.
2 blocks.
And then
I think-
it's gone.
I think they're planning on doing like a 10-foot or 15-foot wide cycle, like a cycle track or multi-purpose.
They're gonna do both. They're gonna widen the sidewalk across their property to be more of a shared use path, but then also have a buffered bike lane that we can protect along
That'd be
in
great.
the eastbound direction.
Buffered bike lane, meaning protected.
Needing extra space between
I'm
them.
not sure if we've resolved whether they're gonna put protective elements in it yet or not, but the idea is let them go in and do that portion first, and then we're hoping we can meanwhile be looking for a grant to do the rest of it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And
Yeah.
that's obviously what we want to do. You guys know, we've talked about this many times. We have so many projects going on along Mineral. We eventually want to connect them all together.
Yeah, it'd be fabulous.
It's like 60% of that stretch from Jackass to the Highland Canal that we're already looking at, and then the Costco one, that's a pretty big chunk. So.
Well, then we're just kicking off the Mineral and Broadway intersection project too.
Right.
That'll be a huge
All
improvement.
right, well, I think that's gonna be one that this board recommends to council at our August meeting.
Lean in on that one.
be prioritized, and kudos for all the stuff we've got and the things that are in work, but if there's any way to leverage all of those and unify it, so that it begins to feel more like a network, I think that would be a real benefit to everybody that lives here and
Yeah.
wants to see us continue to have good access to recreation and commuting, multimodal commuting.
Yeah, I think that's an area of opportunity as well, because I feel like that meme of like the two guys holding arms, like joining hands, that's like a good version of that. Because there's a lot of people who say people are too fast on Mineral. And so if we road diet it, and narrow it a bit, that can also help, with the people who are saying it's becoming too much of a thoroughfare and highway, through our neighborhood in essence. So I think there's a good,
45 miles an hour?
yeah, but people go 55, 60.
I look at it a little bit differently. Give me some protection. I think the traffic is gonna be there, Matt, especially with
Costco.
with Costco and all these new housing units. Everybody agrees we need more housing. But if you can buffer that, I think you can still, and I don't mean buffer, but I mean protect it.
Yeah.
Then I think you've still got a winner.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Costco could buffer it and then we could go in and put temporary C curb on it, right? On the buffered?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we own the road.
I think armadillos and zebras and dolphins should do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so,
Oh my.
Yeah.
well, rhinoceros.
Dolphins, we said orca.
Yeah, come on.
It's a low budget city, it's a low budget orca.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we pause on this until after all the presentations?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and then this is what you've seen up here. These are the corridors we are seeking federal funding for study and then design of certain areas, so. There, so.
One last, sorry, I said, let's move on and I'm gonna ask one more question. So is Euclid a part of a different study?
Yeah, so Euclid is gonna happen. We already have the funding identified for that.
Yeah.
Once we get through the whole on-call procurement process, the idea is to send it out through that, so.
Why do they call Euclid a corridor? Cause it's like 3 block long.
Right, it's not a very long corridor, and so we're doing it in
I
conjunction.
mean, I know that there's a school there that we're all focused on, but
I think it's like Euclid Alati, it's that combo. Yeah. So, cause that's what's missing, is Alati going down in there, I think. So that would be helpful.
all right. I guess I don't understand a corridor, but.
I think from an educational perspective, Alati is a corridor, that's, everyone's driving up and down there to go to run.
Just like a school route,
Heritage.
you use it simultaneous,
Yeah, like school zone, yeah, just main thoroughfare for people getting to and from
School
school.
routes.
Yeah,
all right, makes sense.
it's not mineral, that's for sure.
It's not. All right. Are we ready to get into some of these other presentations? Emily,
Sure.
your show?
Yeah, absolutely.
The second switch over here, or do you wanna share? Would that be easier?
Sure, yeah, that'd be fine.
You seem like you can handle your own PowerPoint.
Not having to say next is always a luxury, I feel like.
What's that?
To advance the slide, not having to say next is always a luxury.
Your own clicker.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, I was actually originally gonna come and talk to you all about this months ago when I was initially with Dr. Cog, but, as we all know, I'm over here with the city of Littleton now. So I think, well, we already did sort of the first part of this agenda, and so today I'm gonna kind of run through some of the regional efforts around Vision Zero and safety, specifically the work that frankly I was doing at Dr. Cog and hopefully what they will be, continuing to do on in the next couple of years, and then some highlights for what else is happening around the region, and then kind of give a little bit of a segue into maybe some conversation around like traffic safety culture and a little bit about that. So yeah, if you have any questions along the way, just feel free to shout it out. So this is sort of just a setting the stage kind of thing I always do with these types of presentations about Vision Zero or safety efforts in the Denver region. And by the way, when I mentioned the Denver region, that's not just obviously Denver. The Dr. Cog region is a very vast land area space. It's got 58 member governments and it's the size of Connecticut. So it's a large space, right? But We really do know that traffic-related deaths and severe injuries are a critical and preventable public health crisis, not just obviously in the Denver region, but frankly, across the United States. And to kind of hit it home a little bit, looking at the data, we know that between 2018 and 2022, traffic fatalities have increased over 25%. And so we just, that's an unacceptable amount of people to be losing their lives in preventable crashes on our roadways. And so I kind of wanted to also just remind us about why we are doing this work and what's so important about it. This is a slide I typically give in a lot of my presentations, and I hate that I
I
have.
love that. I love that we put faces in
Yeah,
and give them the dignity of mentioning their lives.
right. I mean, I don't like having to put this slide together. It's never fun, of course, but again, yeah, I think it's really important to remember, you know, we're not just talking about numbers here. We're talking about people in our community, loved ones, and you know, communities that were impacted for forever because of the loss of these people. So these are folks who, not just Liam, but you know, Sage and Alexis and Dave all lost their lives in the last 15 years on our roadways, walking or biking. So with that being, you know, the state of things in the region, DRCOG in around 2019 started to take on the efforts of developing a regional Vision Zero plan for, you know, this setting out the objectives and the actions that would help us to get to that regional goal of zero. So that plan was put together and adopted by the board in 2020. And then I was hired in 2021, and I basically said, this is kind of out of date. And in the last couple of years in that time, we really started to see the safe system approach become far more prevalent in this transportation safety space. And so it just needed some updating. And so over the last 2 years or so that I was there, I pushed forward some endeavors to update that implementation part of the plan. So really those like actionable strategies that DRCOG is either leading or having their partners lead, that are gonna, you know, get us closer and ultimately to that goal of zero. And then another thing that I think is important to note that is a really big deal actually for DRCOG to have done is publicly making that commitment to an actual timeline of when they want to reach that goal of zero. So there's the commitment to 2040 for traffic fatalities and 2045 for serious injuries. Kind of recognizing that some, you know, we're going for the most severe first and understanding it's still gonna take a lot of time, right? We're not gonna be able to get it all at once. And so really focusing on the most severe first. And then in April of 2024, that updated part of the plan, which included the implementation and a couple other components I'll mention here. So again, this update really was to reestablish a sustainable and actual achievable approach to Vision Zero in the region. And so some of the outcomes that we had are a letter of commitment from the executive director, an executive summary, which really should have existed in the first place, an updated list of the countermeasures, which is actually sounds kind of not that big of a deal, but when local governments like Littleton are applying for TIP funding through DRCOG, in the application, they're required to say if their project is using a safety countermeasure from the plan, and the original plan had over 70 plus countermeasures, including things that were quite frankly not actually safety countermeasures. So we updated it to be reflective of FHWA's proven safety countermeasures, which are backed by data and kind of pulled into 5 different categories around different types of safety. So whether it's intersections, rural roads, traffic calming, or slow speeds, or bicycle and pedestrian, and then cross-cutting. And then the big core again is the implementation plan, which was When I was hired, the implementation plan was a really good document, but it was missing a couple of components. And one of the things that I felt it was really missing were some of the things that I identified here, which were the action leaders and the partners, because initially it just listed all the possible people for an action who could participate in it. And it didn't really say, okay, this is who really should be leading and these are the partners that should be participating as support. And then the time frame for executing an action wasn't really clearly identified as well. And that led to me and staff really just not having any clear direction of what are the most important actions for us to be working on prioritizing right now. Which actions are the most difficult to implement, but also might have the most impact in getting us closer to our goal. So I'm gonna go over about one action through all of the 6 objectives that we updated, just to give you kind of an idea of what Dr. Cog has on their plate for the next 2 years or so. These are immediate actions that they identified. So the idea is that whoever comes in and fills my shoes, they basically have a very clear work plan of these are the things that they need to be continuing to pursue, prioritizing on their work over the next 2 years and making sure we achieve. And so for objective 1, the objective is to increase collaboration among allied agencies. And something that we hear or that heard at Dr. Cog quite often is this desire to have all of these different people from not just the transportation sector, but all of the different communities, frankly, that play a part in this work to come together and collaborate and figure out maybe ways to address some dangerous behaviors on the roadways. And do that with maybe culturally appropriate safety programs and educational messages, as well as outreach and investment. So, and I have kind of listed out here the way we identified sort of its level of impact, whether, we think it's gonna be a really beneficial thing towards our goal, and then how difficult it is to implement it in those 0 to 2 years. So this one, moderately hard, but also gonna hopefully yield pretty good results. So I'm eager to see how this action plays out in the next 2 years, and hopefully it's something that we will be able to be involved in. And in that same vein, there's also the idea of creating more regional collaboration opportunities. I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can learn from our communities around us and see what's working and what's not working and help each other out, and honestly need to be having more communication with our local, partners or people across the way. And so the idea here is that as a regional sort of agency, they will hopefully be putting together more collaboration opportunities, whether it's, ideas to go out in the field together, or it's little 2-day study sessions with groups, just something to get people talking more across the region.
Emily,
Yeah.
question. Does 0 really mean 0 in your mind?
Yeah.
So, do you believe it's possible in your lifetime?
Realistically, no, but that doesn't mean it's not worth trying.
What do you think is the methodology to get there?
Well,
I mean,
So we'll-
I'm hearing you talk
Yeah.
about collaboration and things, and I think those are good things. But it seems like if we're really serious about this, that's not the right way to do it. I mean, we really need to understand every single accident that's happened and understand how to fix what happened there, and do that meticulously. And it isn't enough to say we're gonna ask people there have to be actual changes to infrastructure, behavior, to machinery. I just for fun, Shane just sent you a copy of a briefing, and some of the other people have heard me talk about this before, but it's the FAA's chart that shows fatalities by year in commercial aviation. There was a time when we lost hundreds of people in aviation accidents. Part of that's things that I've been involved with in the past, but there was an effort to absolutely get to zero. And I think that would have been laughable 50 years ago, but we've actually had many years recently where there have been zero commercial airline fatalities. This is a much more complicated problem than that, because you have,
Absolutely.
you know, there are a lot of variables in commercial aviation. There's even more here. But what I don't see, and I apologize for all that preamble to get to this point, I don't see the emphasis on understanding root cause for each fatality and actually setting up a cause and corrective action on each fatality.
Well, I will say I am on objective 2, and I said there's 6 objectives, and so we're getting there. Okay, so the approach to zero is not a one path forward. It's not just one thing. And so what this plan for the region lays out is that they have 6 main objectives and then multiple actions underneath it. And that is one way that they are looking to implement forward a plan to get to zero. What I'm also going to cover is the fact that it's going to take a lot of, you know, policy, and it's going to take a lot of infrastructure and education, but frankly, it's going to take a shift in culture. And that is something that's not going to happen in my lifetime, unfortunately, but it's something that we need to start thinking more about, talking more about, and learning more about, because if we, frankly, in the same way of like aviation crashes, we also had smoke 50 years ago, maybe not 50 years ago, I don't know, but like smoking indoors, right? Like we would have had, there was a time that this meeting, people would have been sitting here smoking cigarettes maybe, right? But
I've got mine under the table.
But we did it with a multiple step approach, right? It wasn't just, oh, it's not allowed and that's it. It was, okay, we're gonna have enforcement, we're gonna have policies, we're gonna do education, we're gonna have a total shift in the way that we think about this. And ultimately now, it's not cool to smoke indoors. So yeah, like, did it happen overnight that people automatically like stopped doing that or even stopped thinking that it was cool or, you know, being acceptable? No, it didn't happen even in a couple of years. And I think that's what is hard for, I think, a lot of people, even myself, to come to grips with is, sure, I really want Vision Zero to happen in my lifetime, but realistically, it is a incredibly complicated, you know, situation that, sure, we can solve with a lot of things that we have the tools for, but even in this room and with what we've got, we only have so much that we can do. We can't, there's people who need to play the policy game, right? Like there's a lot that we can't control with like the automobile industry. And that is a huge factor in things. I mean, the size of vehicles getting larger and heavier. I mean, we can do everything we possibly can in some ways, but if that's not something that's also being addressed, you know, how are we going to do that? So it's a multiple pronged approach. And that's what sort of we're getting at here is that, so the first objective is increasing collaboration because we need to start with people talking and collaborating. Second is increasing awareness of it. And so the idea here is that they would increase more training and education opportunities for whether it's local governments, community organizations, a group like this, even media outlets, because that's a really big way to start thinking more about this and getting people to shift the way their behaviors are and the way they think, is to, you know, have it pervasive in our media, and not just pervasive, but the way that they use their words in the media is very important. I mean, crash versus accident is an incredibly, you know, big conversation in that sphere, and one that I think has been important. And so, again, I think that I will continue getting at that. The idea is that there are multiple things that we're going to have to do. And to be very transparent with you, I was overwhelmed because this was my to-do list as one person. You know, what I'm going through here, they were asking one person to do that. And so I think what it's gonna take is them really hiring more people, because it's gonna take a whole staff to do a Vision Zero program at the regional level. And it's gonna take, bit more commitment from more agencies, to hire more dedicated staff to focus on this. But again, it's so many little things, right? Like, there's so many building blocks that are gonna get us there.
And to your point, Emily, because it's such a complicated problem and it is resource constrained, that's why it's ever so much more important that we really, the money that we do spend on it is spent in the best way we possibly can.
Right.
And so what I'm looking for and trying to offer is to make sure that the actions we're taking match up to a well-understood root cause, so that rather than pointing at something and saying, I know that's what we have to do, I don't want to see us go to a point solution that may not be addressing what's causing it.
Definitely.
So,
So these expected impacts and difficulty to implement, these are not just pulled out of thin air. So the way that we got to these actions and this feedback was through multiple workshops with a regional Vision Zero working group that Shane participated. Did you or Kenna?
For me, then,
Okay,
John.
but so it's, staff from all around the region, local government staff, people from CDOT, all of our, all of the stakeholders participated in these workshops that I hosted, where we would go through all of the actions that we had and review them and say, are these impactful? And if so, how much do we think that they're impactful? And how difficult do we think it's gonna be to implement? And what role do you see yourself playing in implementing this action? So, because we needed that buy-in from the community to say, this is what we believe are actually the things that we want to move forward in to get us to that goal. And again, these are just one action from all of the objectives. Each objective has about 5 to 7 actions. And these are, these are the ones that are the short term or the immediate that they're hoping to aim to achieve in the next 0 to 2 years. Then they have some actions that are short term. So those are the next 3 to 5 years, and then a couple that are more long-term, where they're, more the legislative ones that have kind of a much longer timeline to achieve them. So I just wanted to give you overview.
I'm gonna ask, Tom, you mentioned the commercial aviation and that, were you involved with the kind of root cause stuff?
yeah,
Okay, when we get closer to the end of the year, I'm gonna write myself a note to talk to you about our crash report, because I think that there's good stuff in us, like learning from other industries. And maybe we can, if you've got an afternoon, maybe we can buy you lunch and sit down and talk about it and see what we could apply to.
And that's my, I wouldn't say specialty, but I've been working in crash report analysis since 2016. So I'm very well versed in crash data and that kind of doing that stuff. And so I'm excited, to dig into it and learn more. And even today we were meeting with our GIS team, and I was noticing that the crash report file, that I have that shows us all of the crashes, over the last however many years, doesn't include the narrative. And for me, that is just so important to understanding and again, the root cause and what actually happened for a crash. And I want to be more involved with our police department. I might even go out I would love to do a ride along to see how they're actually filling out crash reports. Because again, so we'll get to it in actually a couple of slides. Here, I'm gonna skip around. So at Dr. Cog, they have a regional crash data file or whatever that has all of the crash data from all of the local governments. Problem is that all the local governments do their crash data a little bit differently, their reporting and analysis. And so that makes the data kind of not very timely for one, not super consistent, and just not the best to work with. And so they've been trying to address that with hiring a dedicated planner to inventory the needs of the region and try and address them in a sufficient way. But yeah, the crash data that we have is complicated and hard to work with. And so I'm very aware of all of the challenges with it. And so when I was working with this side of crash data, I was also working on the state traffic records advisory committee. And so what I'm getting at is there's so many challenges when it comes down to like even the actual reporting of a crash. Because the crash report is so complicated, every officer will report a crash differently for the same type of crash. And there's a lot of education and training that needs to go into officer crash reporting to make sure that once we get it, we're then able to understand it better, right? So like, I'm able to do data analysis, but if I'm knowing that this crash report might not be the most quality crash report that I could be getting, it's hard for me to do like good analysis with not the best data.
I think that helps a lot to understand, and I think for all of us, we appreciate the complexity because every roadway is a little different. You have different cars, you have different drivers, you don't know what was the pedestrian wearing headphones, were they intoxicated? There's so many things.
Right.
But when we're gonna go back and advise the city council on what to do, and they're also not professional traffic engineers or behavioralists, or, they've got to make a decision on a limited set of data. But we want to give them the best recommendation we can so that whatever we come forward with is something that we really think is no kidding going to bring down, improve the safety outcome for all modes of transportation in our city. And that's a beautiful thing. If we could have a microcosm here where we do a good job, that can begin to be a model for other places. And in turn, it may be something, and I'm sure you've looked at other places that do an especially good job and try to model what we do there. So
There's definitely some good peer research around the local area to learn from, so did to dig in more.
apologize for that digression.
You're good. So I will jump back to objective 3, which I think might interest y'all a bunch because objective 3 is really getting at the infrastructure side of things. And so this one is looking to design and retrofit roadways to prioritize safety. And so I think this is a really big action for us that Dr. Cog actually submitted a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant application to hopefully basically build out this work. But the idea is to create a Vision Zero quick build toolkit for member governments. And so the application that was submitted had about, it was 14 or more projects of demonstration style, basically pilot projects around the region. And they're going to be testing them out if we receive the funding. And then those would sort of inform this quick build toolkit. I actually think that a lot of the work that we're doing here in Littleton could and should inform that quick build toolkit as well. It's quite frankly very innovative and I think really setting the stage for what could and should happen across the region. So it's a really exciting resource that they're hoping to put forward in the next couple of years. And so I'm eager to see if it actually comes to fruition with the grant. Objective 5 is improving data collection and reporting. And that's not true. That one's increased funding and resources, sorry. So again, Dr. Cog, one of its main mechanisms is funding through the Transportation Improvement Program. And basically this is looking at further prioritizing safety as a criteria along the application process to make sure that more and more projects that are being submitted for regional funding are actually truly addressing safety. So again, looking at like, where is our money going? Is it actually going to help projects that are addressing or that are improving safety? And then objective 6 is increasing support for legislation, policies, and practices. So again, we don't have a super reliable dedicated funding stream for transportation projects in the region, or at least especially regarding safety. And there was, legislation, if y'all were aware, that went through the session this past time that was for the Vulnerable Roadway User Bill. It was looking to tax larger vehicle owners and that money would be basically put into an enterprise that would go towards improving bicycle and pedestrian safety in Colorado. It unfortunately did not pass this past round, but I know that they're looking to make some revisions to it so that that would hopefully be some level of dedicated funding on a state level, which would be really great to have. And again, that would be a really high impact thing if we were having reliable, dedicated funding to safety projects on a consistent basis. So before I move into kind of a different set part of this presentation, I just want to see if you guys have any questions or comments or anything like that.
I'll give you a good one in terms of collaboration, because it happened today. You'll love this, man. We had two big side dump trucks going by us, and they actually first yielded to my group of cyclists, waved us through, and then they ran interference and became the bad guys rather than us. And then this, probably 5 minutes later, after they turned and had to go to their job site, this cement truck damn near cut us off. Bottom line, what I'm saying is we need to reach out to these trucking companies, because I think they can be an integral part of this, because they're out there playing. So waste management, all those guys, we got to get those people involved in the program.
Oh, that's a helpful comment. Thank you. Okay, so not just I guess Dr. Cog obviously, is pushing for this idea of having a goal of 0, but it's not just Dr. Cog that wants that. Other communities across the region are also recognizing that 0 is the only acceptable number. And so there are 38 recipients of Safe Streets and Roads for All grant funds since 2022. 34 of those are communities that are either in the process or have just finished or are going to be developing a local safety action plan. So basically a Vision 0 plan for their community, which means that's 34 communities across Colorado that will be Vision 0 communities in the next couple of years. And that's not including the 3 communities that we already have of Denver, Boulder, and Fort Collins. So it's just really exciting, as you can see the example of some of the communities that went after this money and are going after this this safety initiative and saying that we are committing to 0. And so I think that's exciting to see that the wide variety of, and also similar to a community like Littleton, right? Dr. Cog, like I mentioned, did apply for funding, and so it was for little over 19.5 million. So that would be exciting if they received the funding for that. And it was for, again, about 14 demonstration projects and then 4 large implementation projects across the region. So some sidewalk, development or building, and then an underpass in Louisville, and gosh, now I'm forgetting the other 2, of course, like a roundabout improvements and one other one that I'm blanking on now, sorry. So those safety action plans, though, I think are something that are really important, because all of those folks who are doing that are most likely going after the safety action or going forward with creating a safety action plan, because that makes them eligible for future funding through this program for implementation projects. And it's $1 billion a year, give or take. There's actually a little bit more every year, but so that's a lot of money for a potential infrastructure project in their community. And that's why you see that many communities that are going after it, because they weren't eligible without this local safety action plan in place. The local safety action plan that they must do has to have these 8 required components. And so the one that I kind of wanted to call out here is leadership, commitment, and goal setting. And that means having some level of political or leadership from their community that has committed to this goal of 0, or moving towards 0. So the other obviously components you can check out, but that's kind of the one I really wanted just to focus on, because Dr. Cog really took that to heart and said, we want to make sure we are having that letter of commitment from our executive director. And so we felt like doing that is really creating, a successful path forward for both the region and internally, for staff to really feel like they had the support to move forward, for this type of work. So why does this matter? And I think kind of coming back to what you were talking about earlier, Tom, we can't do any of this work without safety culture. And so safety culture defined by the FHWA are the shared values, actions, and behaviors that demonstrate a commitment to safety over competing goals and demands. For us to actually really pursue a Vision Zero goal, we have to grow a strong safety culture within the agency, both with, from people like me and staff to leadership, all the way from Aaron to our city manager to the mayor. And then once we, have that, having a public commitment to safety culture and those safety goals is really a way for the community to have a way to step in and play a role in that Vision Zero goal as well. Now, safety culture, Vision Zero, safe systems approach, you keep hearing all these buzzwords. How do they all sort of relate to one another? If you take away anything from today, I feel like this is kind of what I want you to think about and learn, or I guess maybe do a little bit more research yourself around traffic safety culture. But Vision Zero sort of is the target, right? Like that is the goal for us. But safe system, or the safe system approach is how we get there. But the traffic safety culture, transportation safety culture, all the terms you want to use for it, but those values, beliefs, and attitudes that are shared by all the stakeholders, that is essential for us to actually achieve that goal. So that last sentence there, a strong safety culture is essential to the implementation of the safe system approach to achieve our Vision Zero goal. A lot of buzzwords in one sentence, I know. Is it making a little bit of sense to you that we have this multi-pronged approach that has, we're not just saying it's on the onus of the, pedestrian or the car driver to be safe. We're recognizing that, there are multiple factors that go into, the transportation system. And so that's the safe system to get us to the goal of zero. But we can't do any of that unless the people that are doing it, whether it's the staff that are doing it or the people that are driving and walking, actually believe in that goal. So how do we shift the safety culture? Honestly, I'm still learning a lot about this. And so I encourage you to learn, research it as well. There's a lot of really great stuff out of Montana State University. They have an entire Center for Behavioral Health and Culture Change, I think this is what they do a lot of research around. They have trainings around it. I actually attended like a 3-day training. And it was this light bulb moment for me, right? Where I understand we can do education programs, or we can do enforcement, we can build the safest infrastructure possible, but like how do we change the way people actually behave? And so understanding that people's behaviors and their actions are occurring in this social context that we live in, your behaviors are influenced by social factors, basically the groups that you surround yourself with. Like the way you're acting in this moment is frankly influenced by the people that are in this room. And when you go to your work, or you go to your fitness center, or you go to your whatever, your social groups that you may have, you have different ways of making sure that your behaviors align with those groups.
It's a great graphic. I like that.
So as social beings, we are naturally motivated to choose those behaviors that are consistent with the culture of the groups we identify. Again, this is getting kind of meta and very philosophical, I know, but and
Emily, can I test something
yeah.
with what you said? So I live up near County Line Road, and late at night, I hear motorcycles that have, they're rapping out at 8,000 RPM. And I see, you talk about changing culture. You ever talk down at Dr. Cog about motorcycles? I saw the word equity on there, which I think means equal outcomes. And so the number of crashes, it has a lot of other meanings, obviously, I know too, but the number of fatal crashes with motorcycles per mile traveled is exponentially higher, probably 2 exponents higher than car travel. Do we ever talk about that? I mean, if we are serious about getting to Vision Zero, how do you change that kind of culture? Do you mandate that people can't ride motorcycles? How do you address that?
Right. I mean, you know, motorcycles are definitely a challenge, and I think I don't really have an answer for you on how do you address that per se, but again, it's coming back to this, the values and beliefs that we have. And so the more that we start to talk about within all of the social, sort of coming back to it, the different social groups that we belong to, the more we start saying, that's not okay, or this is the way, you know, like safety needs to prioritize this, or basically saying, no, 0 is the goal, and it is not okay for people to die in preventable crashes on our roadways. In every different social group you're in, the more we are able to change the culture. Again, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's, you know, there are so many people that don't think about this because it's not in their social groups. But if you talk to one person about it and you get them thinking about it, that social group might grow. And we want to behave consistent with those groups. And if you are if you're changing the way you act and it's not consistent with the way your group is, then you find different groups that are consistent with that. And so groups will change. It's not a great explanation for you. I don't have an answer for motorcycles though, because
It seems like I'm looking for low-hanging fruit. And if I wanted to bring down fatalities and serious accidents, because I've lost a lot of friends in motorcycle crashes. And it'd be a place I'd look for
yeah. I mean, so Colorado does not have a mandatory helmet law, which is one of the things that DRCOG has on their action. You know, one of the actions is for them to look into both mandatory helmet laws and primary seatbelt laws and those types of things. Motorcycle riders are very passionate about not having to wear a helmet. It's been a battle that's been fought for years and years. And same with, you know, the identity of being an individual. So telling somebody that they can't drive a certain type of vehicle isn't really gonna swing it in our country these days.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that at what point are we, if we have to tell people your culture has to change, how far are we willing to go? That's what I'm wondering. Have you thought about that? Has it been discussed?
Yeah, I mean, it's making these behaviors that people are doing that are dangerous, uncool in a way, and talk, you know, trying to shift people's beliefs and behaviors their beliefs around those types of behaviors isn't gonna be simple, right? Like, there are gonna be people who for a very long time and maybe ever might be stubborn to the point of like, I won't change the way I shift about this if you come at it from one direction. But I think there's always a way to change the way a person thinks about something. And so it's meeting them with what might work for them. And I mean, again, it's gonna take a multitude of like, not just you saying it, right? But it's gonna have, okay, where is this example that I can pull up? They were talking about like with
Can I make
traffic.
a modest proposal? Could we finish it and then
Yeah.
have a commentary?
No, for sure.
Okay.
But I think that,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Matt.
yeah.
Well, then we can have like okay, let's chat, section.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make sure we get through it.
I guess basically getting at the idea here is that if we are going to change the way people think about something, we are not going to be able to do it through one direct route. So say we wanna get people to wear seatbelts. You're not gonna have success just through one specific social group being, or like meeting people just through that social group. So say, again, that's our goal is seatbelt usage. So you're going to try and infiltrate, you're going to, have this message in schools. You're going to have it you're gonna have a policy in your workplace that if you are driving a work vehicle, then you have to wear, seatbelt. You're gonna have a rule within your family that anytime you're in the car, seatbelts on, or in a group, rule with your friend. If you ride in my car, your seatbelt's on. And then, at schools, so it grows, and then, okay, so on a local level, well, we have local laws around seatbelts, and state level, we have state laws on seatbelts. So is that so again, like with drinking and driving, or speeding, you have laws on speeding, but then when you start coming on a little more local level, or like a smaller level, again, if you're driving a work vehicle, you can't speed in that work vehicle. If you're in a friend's car, or if your friends, are driving, then you can't speed in this car. Like when I have people, if I'm in a car with somebody and they pull out their phone or they're driving over the speed limit, like dangerously so, I say something. I take the phone out of their hand. Like that's my personal social group. But you also see advertisement happening about it. You also have actual legislation around not using phones. So
I think we just changed the law this year too. I think.
Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of understanding that we have to change the way we think about this in all of these different social groups that we exist in. So, yeah, our goal is to basically cultivate cultures amongst all of those groups that promote a safe road user behavior. So what I was basically just getting at, the idea that you can't just have one message in one place. It has to be, I keep wanting to say infiltrate, and what is the word I want to use? I don't know.
Inculcated?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I'm gonna just go with that. But today I have been all over the place with my mind, so I apologize that we're taking a long time here. So growing a strong safety culture, safe road user behavior is reinforced and sustained by the social dynamics of the groups. And this little infographic, it's kind of confusing, but basically, if we have all these different beliefs and those are influenced by our social environment, that kind of gives us our decision making and then influences our behavior and might lead to a crash. So I just want to give a couple of thoughts around Vision Zero and why it could fail in communities, why we've seen it not be successful. Really, the idea is that this has the potential to really galvanize and create some like true lasting sustainable change in our community and actually prioritize human life over everything and make sure that nobody is being seriously injured or losing their life in a preventable crash on our roadways. However, I am very well aware, and we've seen it happen in communities where it just turns into lip service. It turns into a slogan, and that is what we don't want to happen, understandably, because then it's just, it's a fruitless effort. But so if we, again, if we come at this with multiple approaches, we don't just say we're gonna take this one path forward around safety, but we recognize that we have to use all these different building blocks to get us there. And that also, first off, starts with a commitment from leadership to make us feel confident moving forward in that goal. That is what sort of is the perfect equation for a successful Vision Zero community. So again, every community has its challenges and its opportunities, and it's not going to look the same. Our vision, or a Vision Zero plan, or Safer Streets Littleton concept isn't going to be the same for any other community. But I think that that's what we need to capitalize on. We have to look at all of the opportunities that we have here and really make sure we enhance them. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this really because I probably talked way too much, but I think that at the end of the day, like if we set a goal of 0, it doesn't need to always have that buzzword saying vision 0, but it's coming to the table with leadership and staff and the community and saying the only acceptable goal for our community for traffic crashes that, you know, is, or for traffic crashes that result in serious injury or fatalities is 0. Then that is sort of what is allowing us to take those major shifts in the way that we think about our planning work, the way we put funding forward and take action in the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Michael, I haven't heard anything from you tonight.
Perfect segue, I have a question.
Yeah.
Thinking about implementation, and you started by talking about the regional plan, is that in itself a safety action plan? Because I'm thinking about the interplay between that and then what the community creates as a safety action plan. It seems like you could potentially have like 2 layers of objectives and actions, which would muddy the waters.
Yep.
And I guess the second part is for Littleton, if we move forward with Vision 0, would we want to align with the regional plan, or what does that look like when we develop our own plan?
So I would say it's, one is that that regional Vision 0 plan developed by Dr. Cog is very much a template for local communities, and they are encouraged to adopt it basically as their own if they so choose. You know, they developed a high injury network for the whole region, and the idea is that yes, these sort of actions could be applied to on a local level, depending on, of course, who is leading what action. But it's pretty common when developing any type of plan like this to have other plan review of things that are either happening in the community or region wide. And so I think if there was, you know, to move forward in some sort of safety action plan for the community, we would definitely take a look at Dr. Cog's actions and see what align and what makes sense to, you know, have as a part of our plan and move forward with.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious there's a ton of work that went into it. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that we would just kind of follow that, but
Yeah, I would say,
but I got lost when you talked about all the communities that are also then doing their own action plan. So I was thinking about just the interplay between the two and.
yeah. That's a great question to actually do maybe a little research on and ask some of those communities that are developing or have developed them, of what level of replication
Yeah.
from Dr. Cog's work. I know at least Castle Pines is not at all from Dr. Cog's, like they developed their own specific like, local set of actions.
They're like a subdivision in essence.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a small, but, so I think it really could be a combination, right? Where we take a look at the actions Dr. Cog has and see, a lot of them frankly wouldn't even be applicable in some ways to Littleton,
Sure.
but, those that were, you know, see how they play into the other actions that we identify and.
As I say, kind of like, summarizing some of the questions and objections over the various meetings is like, some people feel that Vision 0 is kind of a catch-all or one size fits all. Or as Matt has expressed, maybe it doesn't go far enough in some aspects and goes too far in others. But what I would want to point out here with Vision 0, and this is gonna be something that sets kind of like an idea or a policy, but is ultimately gonna be a part of the transportation master plan that the city uses as a guiding document to build its transportation network. And this is gonna be something of like, we're setting objectives, we're setting a goal to guide what we want them to make their design documents, their design standards, what they're gonna implement. When somebody builds, like, say, the Costco, how are they gonna build this? And this should also be reminded that is not the only tool that we have or that we can look at, but is just one aspect of that. And if we feel that there is something missing, or if we feel we need to go further on something, that is a perfectly acceptable thing for us to do. But we need to figure out if that is the direction that the city of Littleton and the citizens want to go after. But it's not, I don't feel something like this is negative because we need to come up with the goal. And I've noticed a lot of things we're having issues with is how we're getting to the goal. Because like you brought up detailed study of every accident, that is absolutely something that happens, but that's gonna be when you do detailed study, but not when you come up with the idea.
And maybe from a perspective of, I agree with that. We have a meeting in July and then we have the council meeting in August. That's a group, that we're gonna attend and present at. So what is our objective for the end of this meeting, in relation to, what, I'm gonna be gone camping in my annual Yellowstone trip that next meeting. So what is the goal from here to the August meeting? That's what I would ask as well.
Yeah, well, at the end of the July meeting, we really need to have like slides ready to go because that next day they need to be submitted to the city manager's office for the whole process to be included in the packet. So, I would say, so the goal of that meeting is to have it all ready to go. The goal for this meeting, I would say, is to at least kind of come up with the content or the areas that you guys would like to touch on with the council meeting. And so, maybe maybe it's starting a discussion on where is there consensus among the board, where is there disagreement, right? Or maybe it's picking out parts of Vision Zero that we've talked about, and starting there.
So it's
Is it specific to Vision Zero?
Well, yeah, so that is what council wants to hear about is Vision Zero. They want to hear your guys' recommendation on what does that look like? Is it a strong yes? Is it a solid no? Is it somewhere in between? Right?
One other thing I just kind of wanted to note around Vision Zero. It's this buzzword that people I think get really hung up on. And when I was meeting with some partners at FHWA earlier this week, I was talking to them sort of about this whole challenge. The idea isn't, it is the community publicly committing to a goal of zero. Like that's the idea that I think we maybe just is also bringing it to council, right? And by publicly committing to that goal, it will require, a concerted plan and with, actionable items for us to get to it, which will take, some time and work. But if people are really caught up on that Vision Zero terminology, which I know was at Dr. Cog a big deal for a while, that, just remind us that it's really just saying that our goal is zero.
And I like that, Emily. And I think to your point, Derek, that is our goal. And I think as a board, we can all get behind the idea that we want to get to zero serious injuries and zero fatalities. That's an easy goal to bring people together on. We wouldn't be here talking about, well, our vision is 3. We had 4 last year. Let's get to 3. Success is achieving zero. We're going to get caught up, I think, in the all of the how steps, but I think that what we want to do at this meeting and then in July is be able to emphatically say to the council, yes, we embrace the idea of the goal of zero. The moniker that we wrap it in is less important, but Vision Zero exists out there, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to view it as a goal, just as you said. And then I think we need to start talking about the components that we think need to be done, and it's some of the things that you talked about. We need to have education, we need to have reinforcement, we need to have enforcement, we need to have, there's gonna be some engineering changes that we're gonna wanna make. We're gonna need to have protected, some protected bike lanes, some beefed up crosswalks. There's a lot of the blocking and tackling or the how-to that I don't think we're gonna be able, and it's not our job to do that. That's for you guys to figure out, and you're a lot better at it and smarter at how to make that happen. But I think that we want to be able to list the things that we see as valuable to put the energy behind. And I think we can identify a lot of those things, and I'll look to people, whether you're here or not, to contribute. You know, what are your hot button things? Some of you, I have a feeling I'll be able to predict, but I'm looking at you.
Everyone looking at.
But put those things in, and we will represent that in the package that, and you'll be able to articulate it, because I presume you'll be back from Yellowstone in August.
It will be, yeah. I would say, I would probably describe my concern with vision, like, let me start with this. I am fine with like packaging it up in the vehicle of Vision Zero.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start with that. My concern with Vision Zero is that the excuse, like, there's a built-in way for there to be no accountability. Because if a person is pissed at the world and is driving drunk and smashes into someone, they wash their hands of it and say, we couldn't stop that, you know, and it's valid, you know, that there are some accidents that cannot be stopped. And so what I want to come from this is accountability and a very clear action plan to make this occur, like to get us towards zero. And my problem with Vision Zero is that there's a built-in excusatory footnote, you know, kind of built in there.
I think it's fair to point that out, but it's also fair to say,
But there's
we're
no-
not gonna eliminate criminal behavior, and somebody that behaves criminally, we're not gonna be able to stop that. If you drive 100 miles an hour and you're blind drunk,
I mainly want accountability of like, we made this goal, what are we actually doing to make this happen? That's my main thing.
I don't think Vision Zero is saying, I think they would say that even that, the drunk man that drove 100 miles per hour is a preventable death.
Oh.
So it's there.
Vision Zero is everybody.
Yes, because then you know what, because if
I've seen some
it's a
people
systems change
flying
approach.
60 feet off in the road off of a curb in Amsterdam, you know, even in
But
Amsterdam.
it's a systems change approach and
Infrastructure definitely determines things though.
yeah, I mean, but
I
you,
agree.
no, finish your thought, Kelly, because I'm not sure I understand what you were saying.
so I relate a lot by my work, right? I work with an international NGO that is establishing sanitation, safe sanitation and water access. It's all systems change and it's a whole heck of a lot of behavior change too. And it is phenomenally hard. And it's, you know, in this instance of saying that, no, that's actually, Vision Zero would say that is a preventable death. And would be accountable for it. You know, if you have to look beyond the system, you're like, well, then where would that accountability lie? And you're like, well, maybe then it's a policy thing in how cars are made. And should they be allowed to go that
That's
fast?
the point.
Right, so it's, a systems change is so massive, which is why it's so hard. There's just, it's the whole environment, well beyond the obvious point.
Can I just show this quick video to just hit home that point about the zero and what I think we're talking about?
I would only be guessing maybe 1,500.
Couple hundred? I don't know, say 1,000. Probably over a few dozen, I'd have to say. Drunk driving. Alcohol related?
Texting and driving.
Road rage.
I would say sadly not. No. Probably not.
I'm hoping for that.
$100, $150?
I think less than 100.
But how could you quantify such a thing?
None. I mean, nobody needs to die. There's no reason for it.
Zero. Zero. Absolutely.
Zero.
Zero, of course.
Zero. Yeah. Yeah, they should shoot for that.
Absolutely.
Ideally, yes.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Obviously, yeah. 0 would be the best goal.
Sorry.
Yes, you.
Yeah, well, it's just like think about it that way, right? Like, yeah, we are human, and you know, we probably made a mistake behind the wheel. Does that mean that you should lose your life? Does that mean that the guy that was going 160 or was drinking, and yeah, and those people who end up maybe also killing somebody else, like that's definitely not the case we want. But again, those are all people in our community and their lives matter, and they are preventable crashes that it's gonna take a systems approach, and it's not gonna be overnight. But I think it really starts with the community and the leadership in the community taking that first step to make the commitment to say 0 is the only acceptable number for us.
And one point that I would make is, I don't remember how many months ago it was, 5 or 6 months ago, we were in this room chatting about this topic, and we were chatting about the person who passed away on Santa Fe. And someone from staff said, yeah, they were like to the side, like, yeah, they were wearing dark clothes, and like, to me, that's just like an example of how easily dismissible, they think like all, deaths are, is that like you should be able to wear a black, like Aaron should be able to go out and cross a road tonight in that attire and it not cost his life, and I really want to not have an excuse in there for anything, but I started it with this sentence. I'm good with Vision Zero. I think Vision Zero is very, very well thought through, lots of people behind it. There's benefits that we get from it being the common vernacular. There's a whole bunch of benefits to it. So I'm good with Vision Zero.
I got a question for you, Matt, and this is just kind of in response to that. Do you remember when we were in the council meeting and the chief of police was there and they were kind of given a report over the additional police officers that were assigned to school zones, and they had noticed a significant reduction in incidents in those school zones when they were able to bring enforcement out there. Kind of in this vein, that could be a action item that we put in our safety action plan, or we could also look at, okay, you have violated the law, like say something used to be this consequence, maybe we want to see an additional consequence that, maybe you struck a pedestrian with your vehicle instead of like being a misdemeanor, maybe now it's a felony or something. Yeah, there is so many aspects we can look at this. It doesn't just have to be, we put a sign up here, we put some striping up here.
Absolutely.
We can look at law enforcement, we can look at, every
Churches.
aspect. It could be talking to somebody, it could be, you caused a consequence and we deem this not okay for the community.
I'm skeptical that the consequences are gonna increase for people hitting other people. I mean, with Liam's death, I watched the sentencing. And almost every time that occurs, they say, in essence, this person has already suffered enough. Let's not do anything, and so I don't foresee that being the case,
Well, and I would wanna posit that, yeah, like restorative justice is actually shown to be a really beneficial thing. And New York City has a restorative justice program for traffic offenders. And I know that the state of Colorado, I would need to remind myself around it, but there are programs in place where people who DUIs are required to go through programs that basically make them interact with victims of victims or victims' family members who've been impacted by DUI crashes. And, you know, that's just one part of, you know, the DUI sentencing. They have all the other things that they have to go through. But
I think that'd be fantastic.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways of seeing, like, does a person, like, again, that person also is a human that made a mistake, and should they have their entire life also cost for something? And now, is that mistake, like, there are ways for us to find a way to resolve it in another way, I feel like.
But what happens when it's repetitive? I mean, there's a
Right, and that's where.
prominent
we need to look at
example
the
right now where
policies.
somebody's been released, after 16 contacts with law enforcement and
Yeah.
numerous DUIs. Now there's a fatality. I think a big part of this, we need to be clear-eyed about intervention. For the person that's never had an accident before and is involved in a serious one, maybe it makes sense to get into some sort of restorative justice. But for somebody who has demonstrated repeated disregard for the norms, we've got to have a stronger enforcement component.
My dad had 3 DUIs. He should have went to jail. And eventually, you're not getting the lesson. You know, so, yeah.
That's a tough lesson because it affected the whole family.
He didn't have his license for my whole childhood, but the day he got, like, you know, very shortly after getting it back, he would go and drink and drive again. Like, I mean, it was ridiculous. And he had a complete disregard. He was very selfish in that regard, so.
So I don't wanna cut off the.
Yeah,
We've got 15 minutes. So you know, jump in as soon as I'm done, but I wonder if we wanna maybe assign some tasks, and then kind of the big question I have is, if we don't feel like one more meeting is enough, do we need to look at something the week of July 8th to get together and hammer some of this stuff out? So, sorry, I just wanna say.
I just wanted to build on your accountability and Vision Zero. Does that become the means for council to say, hey, look at what we've done? And it's simply platitudes and they escape. And so I guess what I'm suggesting is that if we're going to recommend Vision Zero as something that the city does, council needs to totally buy in.
Yeah.
And recognize what they are committing and the changes that they're gonna take the heat for.
And I think we can craft it well. So like, Rob Reichert, you know, was here, Robert Reichert, and he was talking about something that I agree with, where he was saying, from what I'm hearing from community members, we absolutely want to see crashes and fatalities go down. But we also want to see people to report that they feel more safe going on our roads. You know, it's not like we could make it so no one dies, but no one feels safe riding their bike on the road, and that's also an enormous failure. You know, and so how can we craft Vision Zero to catch that, you know?
And build on it.
Yeah, and I think we can. So I would be happy to meet as much as needed for between now and August to help with this. I'm very open to July 8th to answer that question directly. And we could have maybe even a few working sessions that people can, July is a very big vacation month for a lot of people. There's probably no week that works well for everyone. So we could have a couple of them and then people could add on, you know.
Yeah. I wonder how people feel about this idea if we assigned people to come back and at least report back on what you believe if we can all agree that the goal is zero, and we're all fine with using the wrapper Vision Zero. I don't love it. I don't hate it, but we all want it to have real meaning or to have a real effect. So let's come back with, have everybody provide that. And if you could, I don't know, I was gonna volunteer you, but you may not want to be volunteered to be the collecting point for those inputs. But I would volunteer myself to be CC'd on all of that. and try to have something that I could bring back together, maybe even offer in advance of our meeting, so that because we have the website out there that we could put something out there, some sort of a Google Docs.
Yeah, we need to be careful with shared docs because that could constitute a meeting.
Meeting, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I think probably sending it via email and by a certain date, and then I can distribute it and we can make a packet out of it, because this will have to be an additional study session.
Yeah.
So, yeah, then we can send it
But I
out.
think that'd be great, if everybody, would be willing to provide, a couple of slides of what you, believe we ought to be recommending and how we would work to make it something that's meaningful. I just noted some things down there, we want accountability to be defined. It's gotta be more than just platitudes. We wanna look at, what happens at high injury locations, but also we want to, have somehow create a safe feel for the roads in other places. So those are just some of the things that I recorded in my notes. But I think if we could all contribute a couple of those slides, we would be well on our way to having a recommendation. Because keep in mind, we are only an advisory board. We're simply going to provide advice to the council on what we as community members think is important. We've been educated from people that have worked in the field for a long time, and folks are willing to kind of help us with that.
One thing I just wanted to note, I guess, around that whole recommendations thing is, so we haven't had deeper conversations around the Safe Streets for All grant opportunity, but there are at least two more years of funding, I think. 23, 24. Yes, so it's got at least 2 more rounds that we could potentially apply for, this pretty large pool of funding. And we would need to have, though, an action plan that has these components in place if we were wanting to go after that. And again, this is just one grant opportunity that requires it, so it's like we don't need to just think about this, but this is a good maybe place for you to start to think about, these are the components that go into what would develop a safety action plan for Littleton.
We really like getting money from outside of our communities.
Yes. Yeah, and again,
Ken and Shane have been fantastic.
Sometimes I forget, that's the whole reason we're here.
Yeah.
well, and so like you were saying, like this really does get to the core of, you've got the safety analysis here, which would be a really in-depth look at the crash data across Littleton and understanding, the trends and different things that are happening. And it would also require the policy and process review, like you were mentioning. So taking a look at other plans that are happening across, whether it's, Dr. Cog or other local, RTMP and other things like that. And how do they all sort of work together and integrate? But I think if you were wanting sort of a place to start with thinking, doing your homework, this would be a good thing to look at.
Would we be able to, in 10 minutes, come up with the outline of our presentation, like the major bullets? And that way we can feed a bit easier into that with our individual slides?
We can sure try. I like it. I mean,
Maybe narrowing, so that our efforts aren't spread out, yeah.
So number one is what's the goal?
Is there anything specific council has asked for, or is it literally just come talk to us about Vision Zero? Maybe that's a Robert question, I don't know.
Yeah, and Robert could provide more insight, but I think it came from Kyle the mayor wanting to kind of see like, hey, do we pursue Vision Zero? Do we become a Vision Zero city? What, do we become a Vision Zero city, and what's that look like? It's only Thursday. And so, yeah, that's where it came from. That's where the push from this came from. So I think, in the way we had planned is staff was gonna give an update on the front end on all the stuff that the TMB has covered related to it. And we've already provided them those materials, but we'll cover it again so they have some idea of what you guys have gone over. So, but they're wanting to know, is it the right thing? If not, why not? If so, why so?
Yeah, I mean, how much of yes has to do with it qualifies us for more grant money downstream? I mean, is that I know.
Yeah, this is where the terms get a little fuzzy, so,
Yeah.
you know, you can have a safety action plan without being a Vision Zero city. And that safety action plan through the Safe Streets and Roads for All is what will qualify you for future funding for construction. So a Vision Zero plan could be a safety action plan. Does that make sense?
But right now, we do not have a safety
We
action.
do not know, yeah.
Is there
And,
a
yeah.
cost to join Vision Zero? Okay, so.
Got our-
You just get all of
It's a
the
big tent.
propaganda for free.
I am aware that there are grants exclusive to Vision Zero.
There are, yes, yeah.
So I think it would be good for us to explain why this is important as well. I think it's pretty obvious, but I do think it's worth saying, you know, and that could be,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was gonna say that could be also where we, you know, explain kind of our, it's a two-pronged approach of we want zero, you know, deaths and serious injuries. But we also want to make Littleton a very comfortable place for people to be able to get around on whatever mode of transportation they want. Like Tom, you were saying, we have an aging population as well. So we need to make sure that cars, you know, have space. I would also say that a lot of people, when they get older, lose their ability to drive a car. So we need to make sure that they can get around to places without a car, you know, and so that, you know, I think that's part
What
of.
kind of things would those be?
Those are people.
Are you gonna come to my house and take me somewhere in your electric bike?
I have a cargo bike, I'm willing to.
If we do that, we're still gonna need a good road, aren't we?
Yeah, but I'm saying it's all modes of transportation is what I'm saying. It's all modes, yeah, and
And that's what I'm after.
yeah, right now, we've designed it 99.9% for the ease and, you know, efficiency of cars. And so we're making a bit more space there.
What if we say, one of our goals is a comprehensive multimodal transportation system?
Yeah.
That covers.
Comprehensive and connected, or connected multimodal.
It's integrated.
And I will say, you guys are an advisory board, so you don't maybe have to come with a hard yes or no, right? You could say, well, here's some of the good things, here's what we've learned are some of the not so good things, or where the pitfalls are, so.
We learned that at the city.
So background, why it's important.
Yeah, and
I
then state a goal, like what you guys think the goal should be for the city.
I think from a rhetoric perspective, I think it's good to start off with our conclusion and say, this is what we landed on. Let us tell you how we got there.
Okay.
Personally, you know, instead of, you know, stringing them along and then. Yes. But that's a detail. That's not.
Well, that's fine. That's kind of like the old thing, tell them what you, want to tell them. Tell them and then tell them what you told them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
why do we care? I don't really care as much about grants because it's not my day-to-day job to pay the bills or to keep the positions funded. But I know that matters from a block, you know, from a project management point of view for you folks. But I think we want to say, hey, we can get on board this idea of embracing a dramatic reduction in accidents around the town and improvement in the feel of the roadway. But then we can talk about the all modes and stuff like that. So I think this is good. Let's tell them.
Is that the right order then? I guess I'm hearing.
I would say, like, I mean, that could be like an executive summary, you know, first slide, you know, of like, this is what we're recommending. And then we go into background, why it's important, goals. I would say,
So
like, yeah,
zero.
like a computer science, you know, list, yes.
Gosh, somebody.
You got it. You nailed it, I think, yeah. Is it, yes, 1 C, 2 M's?
Just use rec.
Eric, this is
So,
why you're
He did it. No.
So four could maybe be priorities and 5 could maybe be action plan, you know, and that's probably getting into the weeds a bit. But that's how I think of priorities as an important part of this.
Yes, yeah.
You know, to say, like, I really believe getting kids to school safely, getting elderly people where they need to go safely, like this, the most vulnerable citizens in our towns. I think that's a really good start to start.
Which gets to your point about your sidewalks earlier.
Yeah.
If we've got all these trip zones on our sidewalks, well then clearly we need to move some money into sidewalk.
Yeah.
But, so here we have, a framework that we could ask people to contribute ideas on, which, we still have 2 minutes left, man, so you know, let's slow down, but.
You probably get the next level of detail.
But honestly, that would give us a common framework to try to respond to. And I think it's broad enough that we can put things in there. We want to see accountability steps. We want to see, in the action, communication and cultural impacts, some of the things that we talked about tonight.
A good example of action plan from my perspective is, redoing the transportation master plan. Like Pam chatted about this earlier, it's like hitting upon that again, it's getting pretty old. When new developments come in, we have a very specific thing that, like when the Costco comes in, it's very obvious what what kind of infrastructure they're gonna build, and making that, like updating engineering docs or things. So there's a lot of things in there that I think we could hit upon.
And something that I don't know, I guess, how Aaron and Shane, you all feel about this, but like with the transportation TMP needing to be updated, there, I guess, could be a possibility of us sort of incorporating this into it, right? Instead of having two separate efforts that require, all this different outreach, we have.
It's a subset of the other potential.
Right, it's a sort of sub-plan of the TMP.
Yeah, I'm a little, this comment isn't to our presentation per se, but I feel like there could be a little bit of public confusion because the Safer Streets initiative is very public, which is great. It's everywhere. And then if we're making the recommendation of Vision Zero, which I want to, I feel it's almost like.
It can be confusing.
It'll be, it's like, wait, what is this? Isn't this our Safer Streets Vision Zero? It's Vision Zero.
You make a good point.
Again, who's to say we have to use the term Vision Zero? I like the safer streets because it's really more into the safer system approach, right? And so we could have the Safer Streets Littleton plan, which is in essence our Vision Zero plan, because it is committing to a goal of zero and has actions and, a data analysis.
And maybe that's what we put out there. It's like, we don't actually really care what you call it. We're not here to say it must be.
We want funding and results.
Yeah, and again, it's the idea that we want this public, or we want this full scale commitment on all different levels to this goal of.
And I think one thing that's good is incorporating it into one effort for a couple reasons. One, to make sure it talks to each other, but also, adding Emily and you guys have met Kyle. He came and presented with Matt Knight. Kyle is now part of our group. So we'd added 2 people, but that was really to get caught up with all the stuff from the Bike and Ped framework, as well as all the project work we have. So I think, we don't, obviously you guys need to make your recommendation, but I think, staff's concern is like, we get 2 more people and the perception is like, great, you guys can go do 50% more stuff. I'm like, no, our request was to get caught up on the stuff that we're already behind on, so.
Well, and it's less confusing for community members, to Kelly's point.
Right,
if we have all of these different things, we had to have a briefing with, Emily describing, okay, well, vision is our target, say systems are our approach, culture is how we do it, we can't give everybody a roadmap, so the simpler it is, the better. Hey, we want to get safer streets, and Littleton Safer Streets is a great way to personalize it. And here are the mechanisms that will do it, and I think that updating the transportation master plan to reflect that keeps it all simple.
I like that. That's good. One question I have is, you all are literal experts at this, I feel like, and you get paid to do it. And I do not. I'm a YouTube, not just bikes, educated, human. So I don't want to kind of go from scratch and pontificate. I would, it may be helpful if you all as traffic engineers and experts on this seeded it, and then we reviewed it potentially even. Like, we could obviously edit recommendations and things like that, but I don't necessarily think it's best from us
But it is, I think, I would dispute, because they're asking us to recommend as being us.
Right.
They actually want it from the, you
Yeah.
know, us,
Yeah.
what a.
We're gonna actually put extra letters in recommendations
And
so
I
they know
don't
that
think-
it's just amateur.
And I mean, the action, no, we're not going to present
making engineering
them
up.
a 20-point action plan, you know, of what to do verbatim. I mean,
Yeah, and I think, you know, we wanna be conscious of like, you know, we want this to be your recommendation, right? And even if there's a section where we say, hey, staff has a slightly different opinion on this, but this is the board's opinion, right? We wanna make that clear. We don't want it to be muddied or seem like we're not, you know, we're influencing it.
sorry,
Not that
again,
we won't help, you
That's a
know,
great point.
you know, you guys are volunteers, so we can help do stuff, but we want it to be very clear. If there's anything from staff, this is from staff, this is from the board, and make it seem like there's, you know, we're pushing you one way or the other.
You guys can be like, that was not us.
Everybody gets some options.
Throw that thing in the round file and.
Civilians.
Is this where you store our comments, right?
It's right there, yeah.
So are we doing a July 8th potentially?
I can't do July 8th, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just meant that week of July 8th, so, cause then I'm out of town for the rest of July, starting the next week, so. But that doesn't mean we can't do a meeting then, and I was planning on attending the July TMB meeting virtually to make sure we can kind of get it all down, but next week's a holiday. I don't wanna go too far, so it's like this conversation is still fresh in everyone's mind, was my thought, but you guys are the board, so you get to decide. We'll find a staff person to.
Well, let me ask a question of the board. Could we, if we took a week on this and asked that everybody had an input into change by next Thursday, is that asking too much of us to look at those 6 categories up on the board and try to put your ideas, your own personal ideas? And if there's 0, there's 0. But to do it in a week, can we do that?
My own perspective on that.
What?
next Thursday, the 4th.
I won't check it till Friday.
My own perspective on that is,
You don't have to go to work.
I would love some opportunity to collaborate with people, so instead of 7 different, you know, disparate presentations, it's more, a bit more cohesive. But we'd have to have 2 weeks advance notice for any public meeting, right? If it
I
was a
don't
session.
believe so. I'd have to check. I think it's just 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not a ton of time, but we could also, you know, if we decide to do it some night the week of the 8th, we could post that soon so people can show up.
I think people, whoever could come. That could be a input. Other people could add their inputs, and then on the 24th or whatever it is, that could be when it's finalized, you know?
Yeah, the 25th is our final.
Yeah.
What if we aim for something at that midpoint, the week between the 8th and the 12th, of just kind of a check-in meeting where we just kind of collaboratively.
It's like a study session for us
Yeah.
almost, yeah.
That'd work for me.
I love
Are you thinking like the 17th, 18th, somewhere in there?
We do a couple days before. I'm
could it be
leaving
like
like Wednesday or Thursday for Yellowstone.
Oh, like the 16th, were you thinking?
Yeah, Tuesday could be good, yeah.
Okay, so
I like 16.
it just,
Tuesday the 16th?
so let's look at doing that. I think I could reserve some time and we get back together and at least are you thinking that we should have our stuff maybe in a few days before that so that at least we could pull it together when we would show up here with a packet?
We can grab and choose the best, not, I don't say the best of, but like make a cohesive thing from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be out of town, so I will find somebody, we'll coordinate a staff, you know, to figure out who will be here, so, but yeah, we can do that.
Is Kenna gone for a while? Is she gonna?
She's gone today and tomorrow.
Okay.
She'll keep attending these meetings.
I think so, yeah. She hasn't told me she's not. Yeah. So,
Same time or?
6:30 on Tuesday then.
yeah, let's just check the city calendar to see what else is, oh, wait, if there's council's done, not meeting.
Oh, they're back on the 16th.
Are they back? Okay, that's the one other meeting we cannot conflict with is a council, some sort of council, official business or study session.
Okay, so they're gonna have a session on the 16th, a study session?
They're a meeting. I don't know if it's a study session or a regular meeting.
Yeah, either way, let me see.
So you do the Thursday before that? Or no?
Keep in mind too, if you guys want to collaborate in here, you're certainly allowed to do that. You just can't meet more than two.
So if they meet in pairs, can they still discuss board business? We might need to get some clarification on that, but,
Maybe if we aim for the 15th.
You know what? Here's the thing, as much as I would love to have another meeting in here, I don't think it's gonna happen. Why don't we just get our stuff in and then show up here on the,
If some of us did want it to happen.
you could.
Yeah.
You could, absolutely could.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
volunteer board, it's optional, right? We can meet a non-regular, we should
Yeah,
don't count against like attendance, because I think council looks
yeah, I
at.
think it should be optional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to meet before the 24th? Or are you all like,
I can,
I'm not
I can
opposed
meet.
to it.
Yeah, so the 16th council is meeting, that's when they would start back up again, but, not much going on next week, the week of the 8th. And then, or yeah, another day, the week of the 15th.
the week of the 8th is also the week of the 4th? No, that's.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I'd say that week of the.
Different days of the week, yeah. Monday,
So potentially you could do the 9th, which is a Tuesday, the week prior to council getting back together.
I would love to, to have that and attend if anyone else is interested.
So could we come in here on the 9th?
let's see.
You can't do the 9th?
It won't work for everyone. It is.
No, it's never gonna work for
We're gonna
everybody.
work for everyone, yeah,
No.
so it's fine.
That's why I was ready to kind of throw in the towel and say, but Matt says, give it one more try.
I think if we had like the 9th and the 24th, I think everyone will be able to attend one of those, which hopefully is small.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And I think if anybody that can make it, Kelly, can you be here on the 24th? That's our regular meeting?
If
I thought it was the
at
25th.
minimum, I could be here virtually then, for sure.
Okay.
I'll see how it's.
Wednesday, is it on a Wednesday that month?
What was the question, Dave?
Isn't it the 25th, not the 24th?
Oh, it's the 25th. I apologize.
Yeah.
A stickler for the right day. I mean,
So sorry, I was trying to look at availability for this room. Was there a date that you guys?
on the 9th of, is this room available on the 9th of July?
9th of July, the Next Generation Advisory Board
Okay.
meets at 6.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't meet somewhere else. I don't know if they would let us use the council chambers. That might be, for right there. We've used
The lodge before.
If we wipe our feet before we go in?
View Service Center too, so there's other rooms.
So we don't have to nail that down now, but could you look into that and?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, we can figure out the room.
Okay.
Room's just a location.
Yeah. As long as we post it publicly in advance, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, is the 9th, is that what everyone's?
I think that's we've settled that at least a few people can make that. And what we would want to do at that point is to have people provide an input, bring in their thoughts. And then we would attempt to go through and pull out what we think is going to give us our best shot at a package that we can agree to then on the 25th.
Seems like goals, priorities, and action plans are probably
It's a better one up
mostly
there.
gonna be discussing.
But I like this land too, this one.
Sorry, 6:30 to 8:30 is at the time we want to plan on.
I'd say.
Yeah, no more than that.
Hopefully luck.
Yeah, hopefully less. People do have lives, but I've been told. So, yeah, let's try that. And then, I guess the last ask, Sheen, would be that you include those 6 bullets when you, if you'll send us out something
Yeah.
that says, hey, I found a room, and everybody that can make it on the 9th, please, show up and provide your input on what you think is important to provide to council.
And thank you for the Dr. Cog presentation as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emily.
Welcome to the circus.
And I think with that, is there anything else we need to talk about, or can we let people resume?
Is there anything else on the agenda that we needed?
Know what you want to do.
Early flight.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. I think we're done.
All right.
Touched all the bases.
Yeah. I'm gonna put those things up in my notes before I leave.
Yeah, and then just.